का उल्लंघन कर रहा है, ऑब्वियसली कर रहा है, क्योंकि ये डिस्क्रिमिनेट कर रहा है। So hello and welcome to another lecture, and the topic of this lecture is redefining adultery. A very landmark judgment of the Supreme Court, Joseph Shine versus Union of India. जोसेफ शाइन वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया का केस इतना लैंडमार्क जजमेंट है सुप्रीम कोर्ट का, जिसने पूरा फेमिनिस्ट जूरिस्प्रूडेंस को एक नई शेप दी है इंडिया के अंदर। रीडिफाइनिंग एडल्ट्री में हम पढ़ते हैं एन इन डेप्थ लीगल एनालिसिस ऑफ जोसेफ शाइन वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया। इस केस में क्या हुआ था, सेक्शन 497 आईपीसी का सेक्शन 497 that criminalized adultery. And how? What was the definition of adultery? If any person, any man undergoes a sexual intercourse with a woman whom he knows or has reason to believe to be the wife of another man, such sexual intercourse must have taken place without the consent of the husband of such woman, and such sexual intercourse not amounting to the offense of rape amounts to adultery. And in this case, the woman with whom such sexual intercourse has taken place shall not be treated as an abettor, while the man who has done this sexual intercourse is going to face the punishment. That was how the adultery was defined. कि एक व्यक्ति ने, एक मर्द ने एक औरत के साथ सेक्सुअल इंटरकोर्स किया, और इस मर्द को ये पता है कि ये औरत, और पता है और उसके पास रीजन है ये बिलीव करने का, या उसके पास रीजन है बिलीव करने का कि ये औरत किसी दूसरे मर्द की वाइफ है, और उसके बाद भी वो उसके साथ सेक्सुअल इंटरकोर्स करता है बगैर उसकी शौहर की इजाजत के, तो ऐसी सिचुएशन में ये सेक्सुअल इंटरकोर्स रेप नहीं कहलाएगा बल्कि एडल्ट्री कहलाएगी। अब इस केस में ये जो औरत है ये इनोसेंट है, ये अबेटर भी नहीं कहलाएगी, यानी कि इसने अबेट भी नहीं किया ऑफेंस। ये जो मर्द है बाहर वाला, ये जो है इसको सजा दी जाएगी, ये जेल जाएगा। अब आपको अटपटा लगा ना, ये पूरा सेक्शन जो है ये अटपटा है कि यहां पर दो लोग मिलकर क्राइम कर रहे हैं, सजा सिर्फ एक को मिल रही है। और सबसे अटपटी बात यह है कि अगर इसमें कंसेंट की शर्त हटा दी जाए, यानी कि अगर वो व्यक्ति उस औरत के साथ सेक्सुअल इंटरकोर्स करे आफ्टर सीकिंग द कंसेंट ऑफ हर हस्बैंड, तो क्या ये ऑफेंस कंप्लीट नहीं होगा? क्या ये ऑफेंस नहीं कहलाएगा? फिर ये क्या कहलाएगा? इसका मतलब यह है कि द कॉलोनियल लॉ treated wife to be the property of the husband, treated wife to be the property of the husband. And दूसरी अटपटी चीज इसके अंदर ये है, वो ये थी कि अगर दो लोग क्राइम कर रहे हैं तो सिर्फ सजा एक को क्यों दी जा रही है? क्या ये इस औरत के कसूर नहीं है जो उसके साथ सेक्सुअल इंटरकोर्स कर रही है? क्या इसका कसूर नहीं है? क्या इसको भी साथ जेल नहीं जाना चाहिए? क्वेश्चन इज दिस के ये जो जोसेफ शाइन वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया का केस है, ये बहुत ही लैंडमार्क जजमेंट है इन अपहोल्डिंग द राइट्स ऑफ द वुमेन। एंड ऑल्सो देखिए, अब इसमें पूरे केस में, जोसेफ शाइन के केस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने पूरे सेक्शन को 497 को ही स्ट्राइक डाउन कर दिया एज अनकॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल, एज बीइंग वायलेटिव ऑफ आर्टिकल 14, 15, 19, 21। बट द क्वेश्चन इज कि क्या एडल्ट्री क्राइम नहीं है? एडल्ट्री को क्राइम होना चाहिए था। एडल्ट्री को हम इस तरीके से नहीं रख सकते कि बिल्कुल ही फैमिली सिस्टम के जो मॉरल्स हैं, बेसिक मॉरल्स हैं, लीगल प्रिंसिपल्स हैं, उन्हीं को हम खत्म कर दें। तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने इसको तो खत्म कर दिया, बट व्हाट एल्स? वी लुक अप टू द लेजिस्लेचर टू मेक सम अनदर लॉ on criminalizing adultery, right? So the landmark judgment of Joseph Shine versus Union of India heralds a transformative epoch in the annals of Indian jurisprudence. The Supreme Court's abrogation of Section 497, which criminalized adultery, epitomizes the judiciary's commitment to upholding constitutional values of equality, privacy, and autonomy. This analysis delves into the nuanced dimensions of the verdict, its alignment with contemporary constitutional mandates and its reverberations on personal liberties and societal mores. Introduction. The institution of marriage, often venerated as sacrosanct, has been historically insulated within the contours of legal regulation. Section 497, which rendered adultery a penal offence, has long been a contentious provision. The Supreme Court's decision in Joseph Shine to invalidate this provision marks a significant departure from traditionalist legal interpretations, aligning marital relationships with principles of gender equality and individual autonomy. This analysis examines the jurisprudential underpinnings, the arguments presented, and the broader implications of this seminal judgment. Background. Section 497 criminalized adultery, deeming it an offense committed by a man engaging in sexual relations with the wife of another man without the husband's consent. This was the most disturbing part. What if the husband might have consented? This offense would not have taken place. I mean, the incident would have taken place, but it would not have amounted to offense. This is something which is very disturbing, which is very derogatory for a woman's dignity. Okay, the provision was critiqued for its patriarchal underpinnings and gender bias, as it did not hold women equally culpable. Joseph Shine, the petitioner, challenged the constitutionality of this provision, arguing that it infringed upon fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution, specifically Articles 14, right to equality, Article 15, prohibition of discrimination, and Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. Now, what was the primary issue before the court? Whether Section 497 IPC violated the right to equality under Article 14 by discriminating based on gender, whether the provision contravened Article 15 by perpetuating stereotypes against women, whether Section 497 infringed upon the right to privacy and personal liberty under Article 21. Now, these were some of the issues before the Supreme Court. Okay, क्या सेक्शन 497 अनुच्छेद 14 का उल्लंघन कर रहा है ऑब्वियसली कर रहा है, क्योंकि ये डिस्क्रिमिनेट कर रहा है, साफ साफ डिस्क्रिमिनेट कर रहा है बिटवीन मैन एंड अ वुमन, राइट? देन contravened Article 15 by perpetuating stereotypes against women. Article 15 stereotypes against women, obviously 15 को भी वायलेट कर रहा है, क्योंकि 15 डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को प्रोहिबिट कर रहा है ऑन ग्राउंड्स ऑफ सेक्स, इंटर एलिया सेक्स. ओके, बहुत सारे ग्राउंड्स उसमें एक सेक्स भी है. Whether Section 497 IPC infringed upon the right to privacy and personal liberty under Article 21. Now, this is something which people might have different opinions about, because privacy and personal liberty is good, but when you are in a family, when you are in a marital relationship, you owe something to each other. You cannot be allowed, in the name of, and under the guise of privacy and personal liberty, the wives and the husbands cannot be allowed to have extramarital relations, which is something against the basic legal and matrimonial principles of family. This is objectionable, but the Supreme Court was liberal enough to give it a view that everyone has a private and personal life, and everybody has a personal liberty. So definitely it might go in any way. Okay, and it must actually go from the books of penal laws. Arguments, petitioner's arguments. Gender discrimination. Petitioner argued that Section 497 was inherently discriminatory, as it treated women as the property of their husbands, and it did not punish women who were equally part of the act of adultery. Obviously, that's what I said in the beginning of this video, that it actually is not making the woman culpable in the whole issue, who were equally partners in crime. Violation of privacy. The provision was seen as an intrusion into the private realm of individuals, violating their right to privacy and autonomy over their personal choices. Now, arbitrariness. It was contended that the provision was arbitrary and disproportionate, failing to achieve any legitimate state interests. Okay, then respondents' arguments. Protection of marriage. The state defended the provision, arguing that it protected the sanctity of marriage and family life. So then you must punish both people, and you must amend this law and remove this condition of consent of the husband. Okay. Then public morality. The state contended that adultery was an offense against the matrimonial relationship, warranting state intervention to uphold public morality. Now, gender equality in Article 14. That is another very important issue, gender equality in Article 14. The Supreme Court's analysis focused extensively on the discriminatory nature of Section 497. The court noted that the provision was premised on the archaic notion of women being the chattel of their husbands. Obviously, they are being treated like a chattel. कोई भेड़ बकरी थोड़ी है. She is a woman. She is a human being. She has equal dignity in the society. How can we forget that? It contravened Article 14 by denying women equal protection under the law, thereby perpetuating gender inequality. The court's interpretation aligned with its progressive stance in previous landmark cases such as Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India, where it struck down Section 377 decriminalizing consensual homosexual acts. Privacy in Article 21. That's yet another very important judgment. We have read it so many times. Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India, where the 9 judges bench with a ratio of 9:0, they have held unanimously and unequivocally that that privacy is an intrinsic part of Article 21, and therefore, since privacy is a part of fundamental right under Article 21, so drawing from this precedent, the court in Joseph Shine held that Section 497 unduly intruded into the private lives of individuals, violating their autonomy and personal liberty. Then right to dignity and autonomy. The court further underscored that Section 497 was incompatible with the right to dignity, an essential facet of Article 21. By criminalizing adultery, the provision stigmatized individuals and intruded upon their personal choices, thus undermining their dignity. The judgment reiterated the court's commitment to safeguarding individual autonomy as enunciated in cases like Shafeen Jahan versus Ashokan Khem. We have read this before. We have discussed this before. Shafeen Jahan versus Ashokan Khem, right to marry a person of your own choice. But I don't understand that this right exists before you enter into a final marital relationship. Once you are into a marital relationship by your own choice, your right stops. You cannot claim this right anymore, that since you have this right to marry a person of your own choice, you may continue to marry any person and you may continue to have any extramarital relationships, as many as you can and with whom you may wish. That is not how it should go. There is a limit. It is a time bound right. You may marry someone, and after you marry someone, you cannot claim this right anymore. But the Supreme Court had a different view. Supreme Court said that since this is a right and the rights do not have a time bound limitations, so therefore it's going to continue even beyond this. Public morality versus constitutional morality. The court distinguished between public morality and constitutional morality. Public has different moral standards while constitution has different moral standards. Emphasizing that the former cannot infringe upon fundamental rights, the judgment highlighted that adultery, though a moral wrong, cannot be criminalized by the state, and individuals must be allowed to govern their personal lives without undue interference. The conclusion is that the Supreme Court's verdict in Joseph Shine versus Union of India, it's a monumental step towards the development of feminist jurisprudence in India, because it talked about the dignity and rights of the women, and it talked about the domination. It questioned the patriarchal status of some certain laws that dominated that was dominated by men over the entire entire field of women. So that is where lies the success of this law. So that is all about Joseph Shine versus Union of India. Thank you.